And so with that, let's begin the overview. And so why do we submit end of year 4? It's the culmination of your special ed submission. It's required by the IDEA, Individuals with Disability Acts, but specifically, we're collecting data that's not submitted in fall 1. And as you can see, it says student counts and program exits. So program exits aren't a significant data collection in fall 1, but for end of year 4, it's very important. It's written in IDEA section 618. And so that's something that I previously haven't talked about, how important your exits are. And although students can be exited any time, since end of year is a collection that doesn't have a census day, it's throughout the year, all those exits are submitted, at this point in time and are not previously submitted. Again, same as last year, end of year 4 is important for special education monitoring and establishing the district of accountability for the dashboard. We're also looking with those special education programs, special education services monitoring, making sure students are in the correct setting, receiving the right kind of special education. And then end of year 4 has our PSTS for our students with disabilities. The distinction between fall 2 and end of year 4 is fall 2 is your CTE completers. End of year 4 is only those students with disabilities. So the 2 different data collections, and the students with disabilities, again, is acquired 12 months after they finish their secondary education, where the CTE is 6 months. So that's why they're not done at the same time. And as always, just look at the calendar. End of year 4 as the entire academic year. We're looking at 3 specific file types: the SPED, the SSRV, and the PSTS, all records submitted through the API. Some of the key information collected. Of course, we're always looking at the primary disability code, the federal setting or the least restrictive environment, the district of special education accountability, the education plan type, students post-secondary status, meetings and amendments, the services, and the service provider, right? Of course, there's several other data elements, but these are some of the key ones that you'll see on the reports. And then to finish the data collection or the submission, of course, we have the post-secondary status, right? And these students have to be surveyed. And so these are students who have left secondary education. They have not returned, right? They have not transferred to another program or deceased. And these are not students who are continuing on after the 12th grade, right? These are students who have left secondary education. They're not transition students. That's always a question. And we'll cover a little bit more about post-secondary later, and Kyron will demonstrate where to find the information specific to our students with disability and post-secondary. And then we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the collection timeline. And this is kind of rudimentary, but it's something we want to make sure to cover, right? Snapshots began processing this week. So this is the first week that you can see your reports, you can look at your certification errors. The data submission will continue on through June, right? June 30th is the end of the academic year. So if you have a meeting in July, that won't be reported in this end of year. That will show up next year, right? So June 30th is the cutoff of the academic year and the end of the reporting period. Although we're still in the collection window, the last record that's relevant will be on June 30th. The initial deadline is set for July 30th. This initial deadline only needs LEA approval. While to be certified at the end of the amendment window in August, you need SELPA approval. That deadline is the 27th. The initial deadline, you only need LEA approval. And so I'm gonna let Kyron take over and show you where to find these resources rather than just looking at these slides. But while he does that, and feel free to take over anytime, Kyron, I want to emphasize the importance of meeting the initial deadline. If you think about it, the new school year starts for most of us in all practicality in August, if not August, September. And while you're preparing and doing your pre-enrollments and getting ready for the new school year, you don't want to be worried about what happened last year. And so really striving and targeting to meet that initial deadline will propel you into a good submission for fall one. And we know fall one's the money submission. It has a lot of financial implications. Again, every year we have changes, adapt to those new changes. So you really want to make the initial window. Are you ready, Kyron?
Yes, Nate.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'll just show you some areas that you could use to, better equip you in preparing yourself, not just for end of year submission. I do believe you guys already have started close to probably certifying for some, but also, as Nate hinted, in preparation for fall one. So Nate was showing you the timelines of the submission, and so to be able to go and prepare for these timelines, I would suggest looking at different sites that you could take advantage of. First, you could do that by going on help. And just to remind you, these sites can be accessed independently of the CalPADS website. But since we're talking CalPADS, we can just go to help. And there are two sections where you could basically start with, which is the system documentation, which leads us to the CalPADS website, as well as the user manual, which leads us, of course, to the CalPADS user manual. So let's first start with the CalPADS user manual. So you click on the link here from help, and it brings us to the user manual homepage. If you click on the end of year roadmap, at the start of every submission, we always update this first section here to relate to the current submission. So you have your end of year roadmap, and it brings you to this section of the roadmap. So you have your calendar, and Nate hinted all the different dates that you need to hit, or at least prepare for end of year 4. He mentioned the reporting period and the data being submitted and the certification deadlines and amendment windows. So the point of this roadmap is to at least give you, as the name suggests, a roadmap into end of year submissions. You have the different calendars, you have the different flash communications that you could refer to in relation to end of year 4 or even end of year 1, 2, and 3. And so these are your flash. And then also a new added value this year is the end of year submission checklist, which provides you some additional guidance on what to look for, what to prepare for end of year 4. So if you download that checklist, it should bring you this section here. And if you go to end of year 4, you have the different data that are expected of you to report, plus the reports that you need to review. There are two sections here, which is readily available for report 16.9 and 16.10, which will be implemented next week. So this is for the student exits. So make sure to download this after next week. That way it would include those two reports. And then you also have different FAQ links here, and then you have different functionalities. So I'm just rambling here, but the bottom line of this is you have a tool that you could start with in terms of end of year reporting. Another one is, of course, as I've mentioned, the system documentation, which leads you to the actual CalPADS homepage. So it provides you all of the documentations we have, and also it gives you the link to the calendars. Close to the deadline for end of year, maybe around July, the CDE would sometimes update this calendar to include one for next year. And so you already have a glimpse of next year's timelines that Nate was hinting on. That way you can basically establish your schedules for next year's reporting period. So these are some of the things you should consider. Please bookmark this. And and this would really be helpful in terms of preparation, in terms of building that collaboration, building your staff and team, and determining who should be involved in data reporting for this year and upcoming submissions. Is there something else we need to touch on this, Nate? And the flash messages. You have the flash messages as well under, where's that? Sorry, communications. So you have all of these flash messages that you could refer to. And if you go further back, there is one flash message that's really helpful. It's probably a year or two ago, but this is a helpful flash message, especially if you're confused with IEP, IFSPs, how you use your enrollment types. So bookmark this, because at the bottom of this, it also has this part here, the reporting data for students with disabilities. If you're confused what enrollment type to use for a specific SPED setting, this is the table you should be uh, referring to.
And we'll talk about
Yeah,
the
later.
importance of this flash a little bit later.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kyron. I wanted Kyron to come in and show you the resources because, again, when you're being a project manager, you have to be able to point people to these resources. You can't just know them and keep them to yourself. And that brings the value of the roadmap, because certainly everyone that's not interacting with CalPads on a daily basis isn't going to know and want to go to all these different websites, right? But sending them a link to the roadmap, talking about what's in it, will help them and whatever their role or responsibility is with the submission. So with that, I'm going to take back over, I think, Kyron.